Okay, beautiful, awesome. Well, welcome everyone to our first investor update, investor briefing. Thank you for sitting through and participating in that part of the shareholder meeting. Before we go ahead, we'd like to thank. We've got 145 shareholders in total. Those that have attended today. It's also worth kind of pointing out that it might be good to introduce our founding shareholders, our three additional founding shareholders that have come on board through the small scale offer that we undertook post the crowdfunding offer, and they invested $100,000 each in Regen Digital. And so there's three of these, and they're all incredibly valuable kind of contributions, additions to our team. So we've got Will Randall and Simone Lowry, and they've invested via their Circle 5 Foundation, but they're regenerative farmers based out of Tasmania. They're part of the Regenerative Agricultural Network down in Tasmania, and have very deep corporate experience at the global levels. So, for example, Will was CEO of the Noble Group in Singapore for a considerable time, and so they've already shown. Each of our new investors have shown be able to add some immediate value to Regen Digital. And so, for example, Will was able to introduce us to Deloitte, and has organised for Deloitte to provide some pro bono for 2 years, actually. So we're going to be working through what sort of support Deloitte can provide to Regen Digital across the course of that period. But so that's fantastic to have those guys on board. In addition to that, we have Ken Bellamy, and through VRM Biologics. So I've actually got VRM Biologics website here. So if you vrm.science, so VRM Biologic, it has patented processes around promoting soil health through natural processes. And Ken's been very successful in building this business, particularly in China, as it happens, is now turning their attention to Australia and America and the US. So we're really excited to have that kind of aligned investor that has, potentially can offer farmer members benefits in terms of improving their fertiliser use, for example, or saving on their fertiliser costs. And thirdly, we had Zeotech, who's represented here by Peter Zardo, who's the CEO of Today. And so Zeotech is an ASX-listed company with proprietary technology about producing and developing synthetic zeolite. And zeolite's that material that's used, typically, you might be familiar with it being used in hydroponics to help retain water. And so they've got, and it's a very it's a proven technology, but it's high cost, if you like, or it's a high cost additive to enable water retention and nutrient retention. And so Zeotech has been developing processes around creating synthetic zeolite, which can kind of radically reduce the costs. And so again, they're a highly aligned potential organisation that we're hoping that we can introduce to farmer members of Regen Farmers Mutual and farmer customers of Regen Digital over time, to leverage that technology for their benefit. So there are new shareholders that, as I say, expecting, looking forward to working with. So in terms of an investor update, where we landed at the end of last year, we had 275 farmers on our environmental farm assessment. We had just completed the prototyping or testing of the prototype in the with Murray Landscape Improvement Group, and of course we closed the seed funding round. And at its simplest, our key objectives for the next 6 months are really in and around, growing upon those. So what we've spoken about is securing 1,000 farmers, having engaged and ordered our environmental farm assessment by June, middle of this year. Similarly, we're pushing ahead, and we'll talk about this shortly, pushing ahead with the development of the MVP, the minimum viable product, the product will take to market, and we expect that to be well and truly in market by June this year. And what we're aiming to do is to be in a position where bringing those two first steps together, we want to be able to then be in a position to actually kind of raise some scale-up funding towards the middle of the year. And so we'll be engaging with potential investors from the start of the year to help us guide us to that point mid-year where we can kind of enable that to occur. So there are three big picture kind of goals that we've got set ourselves. In terms of some other milestones that we're expecting along the way. And so we're working hand in glove with Regen Farmers Mutual, which is why we'll talk about the intercompany agreement a bit further along. But in terms of at the board and governance level, we expect to be by the next investor briefing. So I think it's the 15th of April or 14th of April, we've got penciled for. By that next investor meeting, we intend to have the Regen Digital board reconstituted and in place, so expanded to 5 members and with bringing on with appropriate expertise. Similarly, over the course of that period, we expect the Regen Farmers Mutual organisational and governance structures to emerge and kind of solidify. And so we're expecting that its board to be expanded and reconstituted, and for the members' council, which is currently kind of the role of the steering committee, if you like. So the steering group that's guided the development of Regen Farmers Mutual to this point, and Regen Digital will become the members' council. And we're also expecting the formation of various reference groups. It's not clear at the moment whether the reference groups sit within Regen Farmers Mutual or some interact with Regen Digital directly. For example, one example might be with respect to how we develop our partners and our, the way we go about collecting data, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. So there's some milestones at the governance level. So we expect some significant changes ahead of that next investor briefing. In terms of education and training, so this is where Regen Digital really looks to leverage the resources of Regen Farmers Mutual. So it's the idea of a distributed network, and we're looking to engage with the way that Regen Farmers Mutual is positioning itself in that market. So there's 2 major things we're doing there with respect to landscape agronomy. I might hand over to Wardy just to get you to talk to this for a moment, if that's okay.
Sure. Hi, everyone. In respect to education and training, there is sort of 2 streams, if you want. There's recognition by the mutual that there's a dearth of skills required for environmental goods and services markets. And if we wanted to get to the scale that, potentially it could be, we don't just need to address, how we train environmental farm assessor. We need to work with the industry to create pathways for, retraining existing extension agents and existing land care officers and existing agronomists so that they can help farmers who they service enter into environmental markets. Likewise, we need undergraduate and postgraduate kind of work to be done. And so we've convened with the likes of Kerry Cochrane, who's written the syllabus for Southern Cross Uni's Regen Ag course, with the Regen Ag Alliance, with Charles Sturt University, with others who are in this ag space to look at, in landscape agronomy, how we as a sector compete for talent against mining and industrial and construction, who are also going to want to know ecologists and, soil scientists and be hoovering them up in this changing market. So how does ag, continue to have a pool of talent? Well, that's an ongoing discussion, and we're hosting it once a month with various interested parties. The other thing that we're hosting once a month, in a formal way and ad hoc throughout the month, is the formation of farmer groups. And we've got 14 groups now at various stages of development, which are looking at landscape impacts. So we need sort of 2 roles within farmer groups. We need very shortly environmental farm assessors who can take local farmers through their onboarding, create their digital twin, understand whether they're going to need biodiversity or LiDAR or, carbon baselining as their next step, and help them to organize those things. And then there's the cat herders who are bringing people together as well. So the cat herders are bringing together local farmers working with the environmental farm assessor, or maybe being the environmental farm assessor. They'll be pulling together landscape scale products, which might be related to hydrology, like drought resilience or flood mitigation, or might be related to, instead of islands of biodiversity, creating corridors of biodiversity. So the education and training bit, very exciting for the mutual, and watch this space. Do you want me to talk to partnerships and agreements, Rohan, or I'll throw back to you?
Might as well come back to me, I suppose, because fly along. So in terms of partnerships and agreements, it is actually a pretty exciting part of what we're doing, in the sense of what we're beginning to understand is the power of the Regen Farmers Mutual is this idea that we're able to align ourselves very strongly with farmers and have that trust and leverage that trust back into relationships and partnerships. So we've had very strong indications from AgForce. In fact, they've said that just early this year they want us to enter into a formal partnership and understand how they can kind of work with Regen Digital and Regen Farmers Mutual to kind of deliver the services that we're developing within Regen Digital for their members. And so they've of course got the ag care methodology, which is a whole of farm methodology that they're very keen to kind of see implemented amongst their members, but more broadly as well. Similarly, Carbonate have been doing great work both with respect to their food score and farm score, which and so they've been working with us and helping to develop a question set that'll enable them to provide farmers and with a visibility about what they can do with respect to kind of stepping into their methodologies. So we've spoken about VRM Biologic and Accounting for Nature have the very detailed and comprehensive and processes to establish biodiversity, but they were part of the pilot with the Western Murray, and so we're trying to work out how we can kind of tease apart their processes so that we can provide kind of some level of indicative kind of score with respect to their ultimate certification, if you like, so that people can get an indication of what they can possibly achieve under Accounting for Nature without going too far through that process. And similarly, Climate Active is an interesting kind of being the government's carbon neutral brand, and they've currently got 2 or 3 farms that are actually kind of registered within the Climate Active space, but there's a real opportunity there, given that we understand that farmers are going to be very interested in being net zero and being, in fact, required to be net zero if they're going to be exporting to some parts of the world where there'll be a carbon tax. We've also got real interest. We've got conversations happening with a property valuation company, or a couple of companies actually, and with respect to an organisation that's works with energy companies in particular, that has particular LiDAR expertise and the databases that sit behind kind of capturing and processing that to enable 3D kind of mapping of landscapes. And industry certification is we're hoping to push ahead with that. We've got a couple of discussions happening there, and for example, the wine industry. So the partnerships and organisation are likely to be progressed substantially over the next 6 months. In terms of the product development, sorry, Wardy?
Yeah, there was a question from Robin Alders if we could just talk to the land care grazing groups or any possible, would it be possible to explore partnerships with land care grazing groups? And I said we would just talk more broadly to land care. So do you want to talk to those?
No, you go. Yep.
I think Landcare nationally, we're in really good, the partnerships manager, Kristen Den Exter, is working with Regen Digital 1 day a week as our product developer. So we're certainly hoping nationally through the National Landcare Network to continue to coordinate with groups. The way that the National Landcare Network works is it's made up of the state organising bodies, and the 2 biggest are Landcare New South Wales and Landcare Victoria. Landcare New South Wales had a new CEO who's just come in, and we haven't yet connected, but we're hoping to actually really move Landcare New South Wales relationship along. And Landcare Victoria is moving along very well. We've got great relationships with Andrew McLean, and Danny Pettingill is one of our leading cat herders, looking like he's very close to getting some first feasibility sort of funding through his process to create landscape scale impact. So we are going to continue to work with Landcare at the state and national level, but really excited to work with any Landcare coordinators at a local level who want to bring together a group, who maybe want to be the cat herder or work with environmental farm assessments to bring on farmers. That's a paid role. So yeah, really interested to work with land carers at every level. Over to you, Rohan.
That's good. And so this is where it's kind of useful to think about it, that so Wardy is talking when he says we, from the land care kind of relationship, the Regen Farmers Mutual in particular is looking to foster relationships with that distributed kind of local farmer group. And so that's part of Wardy's role, if you like, is to kind of enable those relationships to form on that distributed basis. Regen Digital is looking to leverage those relationships by providing value to those relationships that are being developed within Regen Farmers Mutual. Okay. In terms of product development, we've been charging along during the Christmas break, which is good. So using our time wisely, and we're working with the developers, particularly in the US, to push that forward. And there's three parts to this. So there's the tech stack side of things, which is coming together really well. So we've spoken about this during the fundraising process, but like there's three key parts to what we're doing for our minimum viable product. There's the data collection process where we're using Survey Stack. So it's an open source software that's been developed out of the US, and we're working with the developers of that software to tailor their question set, if you like, to meet our needs. And so we're working through that at the moment. And we're working through, in fact, the whole business process of Regen Digital with them, so that because they're part of a broader collective called Open Team in the US. And Open Team is a conglomeration of academics, tech developers, and agricultural companies. And so as part of that collective, they're looking at us going, this is a great use case. We want to understand how to do that, whether it might apply in the US, how we can best maximize this opportunity. And so they're working with us quite closely to understand the business process of Regen Digital, to kind of start mapping out the parts where they can help and where their other gaps might be. So for our MVP, it's really about bringing farmers on. So it's this idea of encouraging farmers to begin to understand their environmental assets. So we need to have this onboarding process, and so from a technology standpoint, the way that onboarding process works is we have a survey which enables them to answer the questions, which enables us to create a digital twin, which is what's enabled through FarmLab and FarmOS, where FarmOS is the way to think of it, it's like a farmer's own website where they have their own content management system, if you like. So every farmer will have their own database which stores their data with respect to their farm, and that we're using FarmOS for that. And Survey Stack enables that data to be collected, and FarmLab we're also using as the Australian-based mapping technology to also collect data and also draw in public data sets with respect that that FarmLab interacts with. So this tech stack's coming together really well. In terms of the question library, why we think this is potentially of value is it talks to this idea of you collect data once, which is what we're trying to do, enable the farmer to create their own data store, their digital twin of their farm, and then leverage that data to create value for themselves and possibly others. And so the way that they can create value is through different use cases, if you like. And so whether it's selling into carbon markets or whether it's demonstrating they're carbon neutral, for example. So some farmers that we've been speaking to aren't even interested in selling, but they are interested in the idea of demonstrating that they're net zero on farm. But so there's a number of different use cases that are emerging, and each of these can be particularly, can each have value to a farmer. And so what we've been doing is we've basically been engaging with different folks out there that can deliver different aspects of these value. And so, and our challenge is to find ways to gather the data in such a way that we get just enough data that we can, that's relatively low cost, that enables a farmer to get an indicative sense of what that particular value might be. So, for example, through the onboarding survey that we've been developing, we'll be able to collect enough data to be able to enable a farmer to be able to get a sense of the carbon opportunity as seen through the Look-See tool that's been developed by the Commonwealth Government. So that's saying carbon as priced by the Commonwealth Government for your property looks broadly like this. And so we'll be able to answer that question immediately through the onboarding survey. Similarly, the federal government's created a biodiversity stewardship testing tool or pricing tool, which does something similar to Look-See. And so we'll be able to actually provide that feedback as well. Is there an opportunity with respect to biodiversity on your farm as, with regards to the Commonwealth scheme? But so what we're trying to say here is what we're trying to enable is for farmers to collect data and then start to pursue the things that interest them with respect to capturing value. Do they want to pursue green provenance, for example? And so that's where the question library enables that sharing of data and that collecting of data once and used maybe for various purposes. And so in terms of the engagement process, where we're currently at with that in terms of the, so this is where we work with Regen Farmers Mutual to engage with farmers. The idea of Regen Digital is kind of a technology play that's leveraging the marketing and distribution capabilities of Regen Farmers Mutual. And so the idea is that in terms of the engagement process, that we're getting farmers to sign up to a wait list and then to come on board and do a survey. And the way we're starting to understand this onboarding process is that it's actually a one-on-one meeting. We're actually spending an hour with a farmer and taking them through the survey, because there's a number of things that we can do through that process. So one is we can help them familiarise them with the technology, which is, with any new technology, there's always a hurdle. We can also help them undertake the mapping of boundaries, which is a process that often requires hand-holding. And the other thing is, with respect to the onboarding survey, we can provide a guided kind of a process by where we can kind of help them to start understanding the opportunities that might be available. And so the idea is, through the survey, is that by the end of the survey, we've collected enough data that we can kind of provide an indicative sense of what those potential opportunities might be. So that they've got that, what we're trying to do is enable the farmer to go, right, okay, I am interested in that, and I can see possibly that's my return on investment if I was to pursue that opportunity is broadly this. It's worth my while to do so. So that's the process we kind of, it looks like we're gravitating to. So we create, this next page kind of summarizes it, however. So the idea is we're enabling farmers to join this waitlist, and we're saying, okay, join the waitlist. And then the reason they're joining the waitlist is because they're interested in pursuing, becoming, getting an environmental farm assessment. So we need to find a way to increase their understanding of that. They can do so in their own time. Once they're ready, they can book a meeting, and there's a fee to set up your digital twin. And that enables that facilitated one-on-one session with an assessor, or in the first instance, for example, it might be Wardy, where they get taken through that survey. And they map their boundary. At the end of this process, they have their digital twin. It's been cast. They have some immediate feedback, for example, with respect to Look-See, with respect to the biodiversity Commonwealth scheme, and quite possibly with respect to other elements as we kind of dig through it. And what we're wanting them to do is to understand that, they can then choose their adventure. Is there an opportunity in the carbon and biodiverse space in your region? Is there a landscape scale opportunity that's coming together? The biodiversity corridor on Loddon Plains, for example. Is there a biodiversity opportunity you can participate in? Are you interested in the whole of farm? Do you understand? We want to be able to kind of left them with an understanding that there is this opportunity to start mapping the value of your practices, and it's likely that will be valuable over time. Soil health, is there an opportunity to kind of save money with respect to fertilizer costs, and so on. And so, from our Regen Digital perspective, our business, what we're looking to do is to motivate a farmer to step into these different verticals, if you like, and then we might be looking at more than one at the same time because he's collecting data that can be used multiple times. But there'll be fees associated with each, and as you step into closer to transaction, there might be additional fees, and those fees might be paid by the farmer, or they might be sponsored to actually undertake a particular activity. So, for example, if we were to have farmers be, we're talking to a large energy company who's very interested in understanding the whole biodiversity footprint around their project that runs through New South Wales. And the idea of them being able to have a LiDAR, being able to encourage farmers to share their data with respect to biodiversity opportunities in the space that could be captured through a LiDAR mapping of the area is a really live one. So, for example, we might be able to have farmers map their farms with LiDAR, having that paid for by someone else. So that basically takes us to where we're at with the kind of the business development. Is there anything, Wardy, that you wanted to add?
No, but I might just end the recording after any questions from the floor before we go into the intercompany agreement. Any questions from the floor? Peter, Alan?
Nothing from me, Wardy.
Good job, Rohan. I'll just press the end now on the recording.
Beautiful.